Hello, gorgeous, powerful listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Powerful Inc. Startup Stories podcast. We've got another incredible, just blown away by the women that I've been meeting. And Angela is our guest today, Angela Quinteros. And she's just got, of course, a beautiful story and is in very much startup mode, a baby business owner, if you will. But again, because she said yes to her heart, even though she had this, great, abundant, full life, when we kind of slow down because of circumstance or a voice inside, we can then start to see more. And this is a common theme that I'm finding in these interviews and that you may be picking up on if you're listening to more than one. But it's all about this small yes. And what I really love about Angela is she articulated very well that where she's at in her journey from going, again, in a corporate job into an entrepreneurial role as a coach, is there's been so many things in life that have played a part in this story that recognize saying yes and saying yes as a whole, not just as a business or into a startup. So I just want to point that out because, we don't want to get too much tunnel vision on what we're doing. We are robust and dynamic and beautiful, very far-reaching humans, souls, spirits. And let's own more of that. Let's own what we've been and what we've accomplished and how it plays into what we're doing. And yes, we can lose it to the book of life or some conditioning, but it never goes away. So Angela's story comes from 19 years in education and being a woman of faith and have given her heart and soul to God. And of course, through life events, coming to new realizations, or in Angela's case, and I'll speak for her and she'll correct me otherwise, saying yes to God going, Angela, it's time. Come on down, right? Like we're on the Price is Right stage. So I'm just so excited to talk with you. We've got some beautiful, beautiful and valuable things to share. Welcome to the show, Angela. Thank you for joining me today.
Amazing. And yeah, there's nothing to correct. Mia, you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. There was a very, very big, scary yes that I had to own and step into to get to where I am today. And there have been many, many other small yeses, as you described, along the way that have all led to where I'm at. And you are also correct in saying that in the baby stages of my business. I mean, I left my job in education in I always lose track of the actual years. 2021. It was July of 2021. And so I have been an entrepreneur officially for a year and a half now. But the whole first year was God giving me time to work on me and set the stage for being a life coach and for owning a business and being an entrepreneur and having the strength to show up in that way boldly in front of the whole world day after day and sort of, preaching, I guess, as you could say, or proclaiming what my truths are and what I've learned over the years and how that has positioned me to be able to help women experience similar types of transformation and go through major life transitions when they're stuck in places of insecurity and doubt and uncertainty and even frozen out of fear. And so that's what I do. I help unthaw them out and get them some clarity and confidence so they can step forward with their own yeses.
And isn't it interesting that you held a high level position in the education system and came with, like, has that been helpful, that beautiful structure and understanding of organizations and, you know, a parallel to business. Was that helpful in starting your own business, or did you feel like this new dimension of you came out and you had to explore and figure out what it means to run a business?
I think for my personal story, it's definitely a little bit of both.
Super.
Yeah, I think my background in education and just my own specific pathway over the course of those 19 years, I started as where most people start, a teacher in the classroom,
Mhm.
and did that for 10 of those 19 years. And then I transitioned into a role called instructional coach, where I was essentially a coach and a mentor to new teachers, and I would observe and give feedback. And
Mhm.
so that experience has like totally set the stage for where I am now, because that sparked something inside of me that just felt so natural. And it was such a powerful connection that I was able to make with those teachers. I don't know how many of your listeners have experience in the corporate world, or maybe even in the world of education, but like having somebody come into your classroom, which is your domain, and like tell you what you're doing well, but also what you need to work on, isn't normally like well received.
Criticism? Do we perceive
Those
it?
when you walk into the room. And I found this knack for
Yeah.
just making people feel comfortable
Mhm.
and really just getting them to trust me. And so then we were able to quickly establish that relationship of trust, which allowed me to help them grow and become better versions of themselves, really professionally, but personally as well in some
Yeah.
instances.
Yeah.
So those 3 years really set that stage of the experience that I'm now using as a life coach,
Yeah.
of just like, how do you listen to somebody and let them pour it all out, but then at the same time help them filter it through and not get so
Mhm.
far down the path that now we don't know where we're at because we've just talked about 10 different things. How do you ask powerful questions so that they can look inside themselves and discover these truths that they have and just haven't owned for themselves yet? So all of those were skills that were given to me in the context of education. And then, as you described, being a leader, I was a school principal
Mhm.
for the last 5 years. And so the nuances that I feel you need to have to be a successful leader and work towards one vision when there are so many different moving parts and so many different personalities to take into consideration, so many different backgrounds, experiences, motivations, um, all these things to just bring perspective and to
Mhm.
like, so that experience of like being able to put myself in other people's shoes and know how to approach each and every conversation unique to the person that was in front of me, whether it was a parent or a student or a staff member or a community member or my boss. Like each
Right.
one of those different types of people required me to approach the conversation with a different perspective and a different um, mindset. And so just that, being able to do that and do that literally from like 1 minute to the next minute, because I was switching who I was talking to that
Mhm.
quickly as a principal. Like all those skills I feel like have really helped me approach, know, be a coach confidently and know that like I have the skills and actual experience to help women filter through their thoughts and all the noise and everything that's happening for them, and really listen for those nuances that they aren't able to catch for themselves, and then be the mirror that reflects it back for them to hear for themselves. um so
That's
definitely
so
that. Yeah.
right. Definitely that. And I really want to um, articulate that you already were what you now are.
Mm,
You already
yeah.
were what you are now.
Hmm.
And I say that for people listening, for you to own, although it sounds like you have a strong connection to it, and for myself, because when we start a business, we can get lost in what's coming and sell ourselves short on what already is. And
Yes.
if you have a calling, you are qualified is a beautiful sentiment quote to embody. and to really trust yourself and to not differentiate that running a business is different from anything that we've done in life. Like, you've raised 3 boys. Seems way harder than starting a business in the age of digital awakening.
Right.
Right. So when we get these ideas or these realizations, they're coming from what's already in, and we're just looking for, I don't know, larger ways to express ourselves, and to do so probably a bit more freely, right? So because jobs have constraints, and I'm in Canada, and the school systems have significant constraints, and there is decorum and I guess regulations required, where you can start to practice those greater skills and get, in a way, like you're getting yourself ready before you know it for what else is coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, and that because I guess, like, to be totally honest, that's not even something I'd fully recognized myself. And yes, for your, your audience of people who are just starting out and they're in the baby stages, like, you are going to have moments of doubt and insecurity, and there's going to be times where you want to quit and throw in the towel and think, never mind, I wasn't called to this. It must have been a dream, or I must have been delusional, or who knows, like what, or I was just thinking bigger than what I actually can handle. What none of that is true. That's all just the insecurities that creep up when we start to show up more powerfully, and when we start to be more bold and really find our true calling. Like you said, that was the beginning for me. That was what built it. But and you also touched on this, there was constraints. In the public school system, I could not talk about my faith at all, especially being the boss, especially because I was
not a faith-based school then, right?
No,
So
it was not. It was public school
that's
system.
challenging in of itself, right?
Public school system. So when we're going through the pandemic, and my staff is asking me, how can you stay so calm right now? I couldn't tell them it's because I have God in my life. Like, that was a big no.
Couldn't even, not even as a personal
Now as a
choice.
life coach, like, so
Right.
to segue back to your original question of like, what is different for me now that I've been learning, is embracing that part of my life and being bolder and more confident about saying, like, I have what I have, and I am who I am because I'm in a relationship with God, and I'm the daughter of the King. And I mean, that's how I speak about it.
Yeah, great.
And so being able to step more into that part of me is like putting on my real skin. It's like stepping into my real skin and my real me, but it's something, it's change. It's different, and change, even though it's my real skin and it feels super comfortable and I can, move and groove in it, it's still new, and there's still parts that are uncomfortable, or where I get a little bit insecure. And so I think that's so important to remind your listeners of, like, you are called because you were qualified. And even if something feels rocky, or you didn't get as many likes as you wanted, or comments as you wanted on a post, or any response at all, it doesn't mean that it wasn't valid content. It doesn't mean that your thoughts are invalid or worthless or nobody cares. It really honestly means nothing. The beauty about the online space is that it's going to be there, and eventually it will hit the right eyes, and it will hit the right ears.
Yes. Amen. We're done. Do you guys get all that? That was gold. Take it to the bank. Yes, you show up to show up because you have to show up. And Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was worth the time it took to get that result. And time is going to pass anyway. And you can't ignore, you can't deny that calling, because it will not go away. You could numb it, you could push it away, you could put it in locked up storage for a long time, but it will always come back. And most importantly, the longer you ignore it, then you're putting off the inevitable, which will be it showing up on your deathbed and saying, hey, honey, before you leave, I need to implant this to you so you remember for next time, if you believe in reincarnation and continuity that way. Or take this with you as the lesson as you move into the afterlife. So this, not the sooner, it will come when it's the right time. And then what? What was it like to quit your job to pursue your business full time?
Oh my goodness, it was so many things. The first things was freedom. And it was just this like instant weight lifted off my shoulders when I turned in that letter of resignation well before I had even made a single dollar as a coach. It was just instant release. And for me as a believer, I also just heard that little whisper of God saying like, well done, you've taken that first step. And so then you get that, you know, I mean, we all love that validation of when somebody tells you good job.
Yep.
Yeah, so those were all the initial things, but alongside that was a little bit of fear and like, holy crap, what did I just do? And like, okay, now what is this going to look like? And the fact that I didn't start making money as soon as I put an offer out there really scared me. I went from a 6-figure income and being the breadwinner in our home to a 0 income. And for me, I was raised that you work for what you want.
Okay.
And so for me to be working and be making these attempts and doing what I was told I was supposed to do, I had a business coach and everything.
Okay.
And to be putting out these offers and then get crickets and zeros and nobody signing up, that was one of those examples that I gave that I just talked about, where I felt like, okay, did I hear you wrong? Like, is this not what I'm supposed to be doing? I thought you called me out of education, but right now I can't think of any other way to make money other than minimum wage, and I ain't going there.
Or going to beg for your job back either.
Right. Yeah. And it was super scary. And what I started to recognize was in my specific story, God provided financially in different ways. And so that pressure and that release was relieved in his provision and just the way that he showed up in very creative, unexpected ways.
Of course.
And then B, I also was recognizing a little bit of what I think I mentioned earlier on of so the other part of how did I feel? There was grief.
Yes.
There was total grief. I lost a huge part of my identity that I was wanting to get rid of at the time because it was the thing that was burning me out and had me like just turned to dust. So I was wanting to get rid of it, but once it was gone, I missed it.
Yeah.
I missed the prestige. I missed the title of being the leader and being recognized as a good leader and the allocates that came with that. I missed that external validation that I would get from my job. I missed obviously the financial security, the money part, like that to me equaled success. And so since I wasn't making money yet in my business, I wasn't successful in what I was doing. And so there was all these little seeds that were getting planted of doubt and insecurity and like, you haven't made money, so you're not doing it right. It's not, you're not being successful. And so there was all kinds of feelings that came with it. And still simultaneously with the appreciation and gratitude and like celebration of like, I can actually run to the school and take my kid their lunch because they forgot it because I'm home. I can actually handle 50 phone calls in a day when my grandfather passes away because I'm home, and I can pull away from my business for a little bit. If I was a school principal, yes, you get some grievance time, but you can't truly pull away. You can't turn it all off.
No, it's a living, crazy, needy entity.
And yes, and so many things where like I was still grateful and happy and like so appreciative of the space and time freedom that I'd been given, but at the same time, like still freaking out a little bit of like, but is this really gonna work? Do I actually have a business?
So this is so gorgeous because what you're speaking of is duality. Duality. One doesn't exist without another, not one numerically. And this is a new concept. Well, it's not a new concept, but in terms of my connection to the word and the concept duality is just arrived for me in like the last week or so, because I'm experiencing some of that. And I so love that you spoke to the grief of leaving a job and all that that represented. 19 years, call it 20, is a significant portion of our adult life. And, you know, we say, oh, children grow up so fast. Well, because they change so much over 20 years. But then after, we're kind of like, oh, now we're just are. And change isn't physical and it's less cerebral in some ways. And you know, can certainly be less physical other than the gift of aging, which is equivalent to staying alive. Ladies, let's be gentle on ourselves. We're not dead, we're aging, we're alive. So this duality of everything is a great awareness that you have. And maybe now in hindsight, you can see it. It can be hard when we're in it. But, you know, just to really point out, to give ourselves permission and to recognize that it's never going to be just one happy thing. Because what is joy without grief? What is sun without dark? What is warm without cold? These are like nature's laws. And we should expect to have these. And I know for myself, like I would get on these highs and then kind of crash, right? And now I'm learning to just ride the wave and enjoy it all and ground in. And that doesn't mean not being like the excited 5-year-old that really exists inside of me. It is just being like, I don't know, aware and open to the things that are happening and allowing them to happen and ebb and flow. For sure. Yeah. So you quit, you're excited. The other thing I wanted to play back there was this idea of receiving. And you spoke of like receiving success but you know, can be often identified for us in the form of money. But receiving is so much more than that. And so in quitting your job, you were able to receive space for your children, space for your grandparents, see the family through that, because let's face it, that's not a nuclear event. That is a huge, huge event that affects multiple personalities and dynamics and things. Able to receive space, a year or so of space to incubate yourself and come into this life coach, to space to grieve and adjust to the change. And then these wonderful, you know, gifts of God that you said were sprinkled throughout too. So in that year, what were you doing as you started to explore your business and your newer self, your more self?
Yeah, I was, as I had mentioned, I had hired a business coach and was in a program, and it was a year-long program. That was actually the second coach I had hired. The first coach, I had already hired her while I was still a principal, because she was the one that had kind of planted the seed of like, you actually can have your dream career, because I was her market research person. And I think your audience understands the term market research. And and so in that conversation, I thought I was just talking to somebody that my mom respected and was like going to pay me $50 to talk to her for an hour. But in that conversation, she planted the seed, and kind of like, I know I can see now in hindsight that God used her to like open my mind to the possibilities of things beyond education. Because I had come to him and was like, I am burnt to a crisp. I've done the math. I don't got 25 more years. I don't even think I have one more year. Like, what is next? And so that is part of it. And she was super heavy on business strategy, super like very specifically like high ticket client attraction is what that program was geared towards, which is what I needed at the time when my mind was so focused on financial security and the replacement of my income. I couldn't fathom life without replacing the current level of income that we had been living at. And so that high ticket client,
10 clients,
mindset program,
$10,000,
yes,
100 grand.
all of that.
I'm in.
That was,
sounds great. Let's do it.
yes, that was what I needed to hear in order to take this leap of faith. And then after leaving the job and continuing, then I started, as I'm doing the work with her, of like, who's your ideal client? What's your niche? What's your this? And like diving into those things, I really just could not gain any traction. And it was just like going up against this wall. And I started to recognize that like, it was because I wasn't bringing God anywhere into it. I was targeting executive leaders at the time. And
people who would
while
have
I knew
pay for high ticket.
Yep. And I knew I
but
had
not really your people.
No, I thought they could be my people because I was an executive leader. Like I was the woman who has the master's degree and led a school of 600. I mean, in the corporate world, being a principal is the equivalent of being a CEO because I supported a staff of 60 and oversaw a campus of 600 students plus their parents.
And step parents and grandparents and legal guardians.
And so logically, it made sense that this would be a good niche for me to pursue because they can afford it. I can speak to it. I can support it. All the things, right?
I feel qualified to relate.
I feel qualified to relate to
like
them.
We're on
all
a level.
Things.
So it's not scary to think of myself as and I'm just making up the number, but like as a $10,000 per client coach, it feels right. Okay.
Right. And then I wasn't gaining traction. And so then I don't know how many of your listeners, but I imagine it's the similar experience for them as it was for me of like, once you become an entrepreneur, like your online world just kind of grows really quickly and you hear and get exposed to all these things that you didn't even know existed before. And so that same thing happened for me. And I found my next business coach, which was a Christ-centered business coaching program. And that felt like the missing piece. It was like, this is what's been missing. You're a faith-filled person. You give glory to God for the credit to God for getting you out of that burnout season and this career. And you're not bringing him along with you for this ride in entrepreneurship. That was where it felt incongruent for me at the time. And so this felt really great. Well, this program, while it did give me business strategy, so you asked what was I doing during this whole year, I was essentially following the program. If they said prepare for a launch for a group coaching program, then I created a group coaching program and I followed the script, so to speak, for the launch. And then I was going to all my coaching calls and working through the workbooks and doing all the things that I was being told to do to be a successful Christ-centered business owner and entrepreneur. And the pieces of that program that were working for me the best and speaking to me the most were the mindset pieces and the personal growth pieces of just like, that's when I started to recognize that how deep in grief I really was at the time and why I was taking these feelings about losing that identity, but transferring it to a feeling of lack of success or inability to step into this role of entrepreneur. And so I did a lot of healing. I was going through the motions when it came to the scripts and the workbooks and the business minded stuff. I was doing my homework. I was being a good student. But it wasn't really, like I've shared with you, I had $0 launches because there was no fruit to see from my efforts. And I now know, looking back in hindsight, I can now see it's because God was laying this foundation for me to have roots that go so deep so that when he does bring clients my way, I'm unshakable. And when I do have to start to manage more time being placed into my schedule that I don't have as much flexibility with and still making my my family a priority, and what we've established as our quote unquote new normal, which is healthier for all of us. Maintaining that, I can now do that with confidence because of all this time that I spent learning about myself, understanding my weaknesses, my strengths, and just healing too. There was a lot of healing that took place over the last year. And then, like I said, simultaneously going through the motions, taking business steps of like just knowledge, creating knowledge-based learning more about online space. How do you market yourself? How do you attract people into your audience? What are different ways that you can serve an audience virtually or in person? How do you like all the things? And so also taking steps towards that like, know, and trust factor and gaining credibility out in the online space as well as my local community.
So this is creating a business while creating the you that will serve through the business.
Yes.
Creating a business while creating the you that serves through the business.
Mm-hmm.
And in the coaching industry, we can have a very meaningful impact when we have gone through what it is that we want to share and support others in.
Mm-hmm.
And doing your own work prepares you with this built-in return on investment. And again, that abundance, that receiving, not necessarily being money, but being healing, being a new voice that somebody needs, because for other women of faith, they may feel more comfortable identifying with you, and you will be the right messenger for them as a result of that, right? So it's a beautiful synchronicity that happens kind of simultaneously. But what I also love about your first year is that you did build structures around your business. You didn't just try to like sell this idea into the wind. And so
Right.
now in your business, presumably from what assumptions I'm making around that program, launches different kinds of offers, different kinds of events, probably different tiers of cost for offers,
Right.
and including an upcoming Valentine's Day event in person. So let's talk about some of that, like the actual more tangible things now that are allowing you to express and serve and request a monetary exchange for.
Mm-hmm.
What are you
So,
selling? What are the
yeah,
offers? How have you structured your
exactly.
offers?
Right.
Sometimes
No,
I get
and
wordy. What
yeah,
am I
no,
saying?
no. And you did, yeah, you did introduce that perfectly of like what I had been learning and what I had been putting into place. And yeah, so where that has all led me to has been, I'm no longer, well, that didn't last very long, to be honest. In the approach of like high ticket, that didn't really resonate for me. It was more of like who do I really feel
Yes.
called to serve, and who do I
like that executive high ticket had the wrong shininess to what this greater mission was.
Yes.
Right? Like you were trying
Yes.
to leave that world, and
Right.
then you're coming back in a different, it's
Yeah.
sweet, right? You're like, oh, so it was like a test, I guess, of really letting go, like you said, of that identity. So great.
Yeah.
Yes. High ticket,
No, it was. And then
not
recognize
needed,
that
right? Not
not
necessarily
needed.
needed to build a business.
Right.
See things online. I made $100,000 selling a $37 offer. So just create some different things at different prices. So you let go of
Right.
high ticket. Great.
Yep, I let go of high ticket, and I even let go of, I had been taught that you should start in group coaching. which was interesting. And so I guess maybe because more bang for your buck, like you advertise something, and if you get 10 people to sign up at that price, you can serve them all at the same time, versus if you have 10 one-on-one clients, then that's more time from you that's needed to serve them. So I get the rationale behind that. But again, like I was discovering that my sweet spot was more so in the one-on-one connections and in helping each woman through her individual story where she was at. And so that's really kind of where I've landed right now. I have what's called power hour sessions, which is kind of that low entry of like, let's just dip our toes in the water of coaching with Angela and and just kind of see what it's at. And it's like $50 an hour, or you can do bundles and save some money. And, you know, that's how we just kind of would get started. Or sometimes that's all a woman needs, is just they need that sounding board to work through one thing that has been holding them back, and they can't pinpoint it, and they just need to like verbally vomit and then have somebody process that vomit for them.
And you use that in a post too, which is humorous, right? Like, look, you're lit
Yeah.
up giggling. It's fantastic. So you're enjoying that. They're enjoying that. It's a very friendly coaching commitment. It's not like $5,000 for 6 months with a stranger that may or may not actually align with me.
And it's so versatile. Like if somebody is local to me and they want to start coaching, I'm totally down. Let's do a walk and talk. Like I strongly believe in like being in a place that grounds you when you're being coached, whether that's on a walk in the fresh air or near water for some people, or your safe space in your house, like whatever that may be. So yeah, it's so flexible that I can do it in person for anybody who's local. I can do it through Zoom for anybody who's not. I can do it on an app called Voxer for anybody who doesn't have Wi-Fi internet access in that time frame, or doesn't have that same flexibility of like, I need to be on a camera for an hour straight. It's like, no, through Voxer, you can be a little bit more flexible, and we can still have a solid hour of really good coaching.
Yes.
So there's so much flexibility with it that I've really found that's a sweet spot for me. And then, like you kind of said, there's tiers, right? So there are women that are finding themselves in my world, and that's where yesterday's post came into play, of like talking to all these different major decisions I've had in my life, major life transitions I've gone through in my 42 so far years of life. Because I'm finding that that is a need that I didn't recognize many women have, is somebody to help them process all the thoughts that come up through making major transitions or life decisions. And usually they're thinking about making that because they're unhappy with where they currently are, whether that's a relationship or a job. Usually it's a job. Sometimes it's the city you're living in or the type of home you're living in. But whatever it may be, that transition you're exploring or that change you're exploring, you're going to your normal places for mentorship or for sounding boards. And sometimes your normal places aren't able to understand your heart, or they are giving advice that's logical. They're giving advice that's from their past experiences, and they're not truly listening to you. And so I've discovered that like that's a true gift to give women, is to be able to have the skills to just listen and hear their heart and their true desire, and give them permission to step towards that, and to filter out all the noise and filter out all the external circumstances and outside perspectives that are colluding this thought process and this decision. And so that's like, I call that next level life experience. And it's a 12-week one-on-one intensive kind of program to help you move towards or get through a major life transition. And then something that I'm super pumped about, as I do in-person retreats. Again, I just get so lit up.
What?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, an online coach who does things in person. I just love the freedom.
COVID's over. We can get back into the real world.
Yes. And there's so much freedom in stepping into what feels good for you.
Yeah.
And when it feels good for you, you show up with a different energy. Like Mia, I so appreciated when one of the first things you said is like, your face just lights up. Like you're just so joyful. And I feel it through your posts and I see it in your pictures. And like, I so appreciated hearing you say that, because that's my goal. That's what I want. I want my audience to feel my energy and my excitement around these things and my confidence around these things. And that happened for me as a even baby business owner. That has happened for me when I've really just stopped listening to the gurus to the T. I take it in, I respect it for what it is as somebody who's above me in experience and income and all the things. But then I also have given myself freedom to just be like, okay, well, this particular part doesn't feel good for me. This feels forced. Like going into other people's Facebook groups and engaging there to try to grow my own audience. When I was doing that, it was a chore. It felt icky. It wasn't authentic. And so did it improve and like, do I have a bigger audience as a result of my activity over in those places? No, it didn't work. Because I didn't have the authenticity behind it. I didn't have the right intentions behind it. I was doing it because somebody told me that's what you're supposed to do. And so as soon as I was able to let that go and just truly be more in flow with where I felt in alignment, with where I felt God was calling me to, all of those things, like I just found myself showing up differently, which then created more engagement. Ah, surprise.
So the importance of the photo, if I look at your LinkedIn photo, which I think was still a bit more principle.
LinkedIn is a little dusty. I'm rarely over in LinkedIn at all.
Right. So if you guys are interested to really see this tangible concept of energy, of vibe, look at Angela's LinkedIn profile. I'll use it when I promote this podcast. I'll do the contrast to how she's showing up now. She looks more like herself now than she did there. And that does send out a pulse. And it does, guys, it takes time to get going. Like we're not opening a new Starbucks that's been around for 30 years that everybody knows, right? We're opening up we're opening up a new service that is also new to us to get to know. And what's really cool with what you've done is you've played and experimented with different things and got a sense of them and didn't say no right away and didn't only say yes to one thing either. You just experimented a little bit and tried different things and just kept working on what you were building overall. And we as solopreneurs, as entrepreneurs, as startups, there's a lot to learn. And so you just pick one or two things and go with it and try, and then pick another one or two things and go with it and try. And what I really love about what you're doing in your business is these in-person events. And so in our preamble, I mentioned, I just really have this screaming loud message around marketing because it can feel like such a barrier. But all we're doing in marketing is talking about what we love and what's on our heart. And we're sharing it. And we can do that in a number of different ways. So we can do that online, but we can also, which is I'm gonna like be super ad nauseum with this, kick it old school. Gonna kick it old school all the way to like 2090, back to the new 90s, around showing up in person and offering small collectives. And as you said as well, you're looking for quality over quantity. And that will bring more quantity over time.
Yes.
So after putting these offers out that you have, and you had an in-person event in October, you're doing it again in a couple of weeks time from this recording, well, even less than that. So tell us a bit about that and how it went the first time, because you created a copy paste process
Mm,
for these in-person events, right?
right.
Because you had success and now you have a new tool to keep going with, which is great. So bring us into that part of the business.
Yeah, for sure. So the concept of the retreats kind of just got started. Well, one, it was a dream idea that I had from the very beginning of like, and I still have it as far as how grandiose I would like them to get. In fact, I was just telling my husband this morning, I was like, I want to hold a retreat that's like a weekend long retreat. And eventually I want to own a piece of property where I can hold the retreats on the property regularly throughout the year.
Mhm.
Dreams, mostly because I love in-person connection. Like I just love meeting new people. And online is great for that too, but there's just something different about physically sharing space with people.
I want to hug them. I want to touch people.
Yes,
I
yes, yes.
want to smell them.
Yes, and breaking bread with them, sharing
Yeah.
food, sharing
Yeah.
drinks, and just that different environment that creates. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I've recognized a lot, really honestly, it started with my own friend circle of just like, how great would it be if I could provide a space to bring these different women in my life from different pieces? They're all within 20 miles of me, but they're just from different pieces, areas of my life. If
Mhm.
I could bring them all together and give them 4 hours of just me pouring into them and them getting, the name of the retreat was called Refresh. And
Mhm.
it was just that concept of like, you are a busy, most of them were moms, you're a busy woman, you don't take time for yourself, you don't prioritize some self-care, you really give with very little coming back for you. And so here's an opportunity to take 4 hours out of your day on a Saturday and come and enjoy some amazing food and some delicious drinks in a beautiful country setting.
Mhm.
um, and just let me pour into you and get
Mhm.
refreshed in those 4 hours, and you will leave it feeling lighter and fresher and more energized and just a little bit happier.
Well, and
That was
equipped
the goal.
with new tools, right?
And equipped with new tools. Absolutely. It was a great combination of teaching and like me sharing content that the Lord had given me,
Right.
as well as just my own experience around things like boundaries and creating priorities and using your values as a filter for time management and for decision making. And so that was a big piece of it. Um, and then, yeah,
So it's you on stage, you air quote stage.
yeah,
And are you speaking? Are you using any visual um, support, like any PowerPoint? I'm so love PowerPoint forever.
yeah. I
For
that
example.
for me, that has not been my
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
The women who came received a journal and
Okay.
they received like a one-page handout because Refresh ended up being an acronym.
Okay.
And so they received a one-page handout with like the different
Okay.
letters, and I would give them time to sort of like pause and take a few notes or pause and turn and talk to each other at the table. And that's where like my teaching skills came into play. Like earlier on, we talked about how did my experience
Mhm.
in my career in my corporate side lead into what I now do as a life coach. And like putting on this retreat, I tapped into all kinds of those skills of just like, how do you bring people together and not just sit and talk to, it's not you're not preaching at them, it's not
Yeah.
sit and get, we call it, that's a phrase we use in education of like, it's not
Okay.
sit and get, you don't
Okay.
just sit here and receive because in
You're not
case
TV.
your listeners didn't know this, if you speak for an hour, your listeners are only getting 10%.
Wow.
They can only retain 10% of what you just said in that hour, and that 10% could be gold, it could be the one thing they need. But that's also why like this podcasts are so great, because you can play it again and you're
Mhm.
going to get a different 10% the second time you listen to it.
So listen 10 times
Yeah, so listen 10
and
times.
leave lots of reviews every time.
Yeah. So no, I don't use any visuals. For me, it was more about, I really wanted to create that sense of community, that sense of like, we're here to share this space together and support each other. You're here to also learn and gain applicable strategies and skills, but you're also here to just be encouraged. And know that you're not alone in this struggle to find what we call work-life balance or life balance, or, you know, all these things. And so that was my focus. So I intentionally kept it very family feeling, very much like we're around the family table type of feeling of, um, you know, lots of discussion amongst the women. And again, the food and drinks part helped, of just like very casual.
Mhm.
It was an outdoor event for
Mhm.
that time, because October is here in California where I live. It's beautiful weather
Mhm.
typically. And then, so now for this next retreat in February, I have like the structure of like, how do I advertise this? Because I still have to advertise it mostly online.
Yeah.
Still, I'm still using Facebook and Instagram to advertise it and promote it, because most of the people that this would be appropriate for are following me in those spaces.
Okay.
And then I have, through word of mouth too, like, you know, at my local church, they've
Yeah.
promoted it in their women's groups for me.
Super.
Friends have promoted it in their women's
Mhm.
groups at their churches where they go, because it is I do talk about God a lot, so you don't have to be a Christian to go, but you do need to be okay with hearing me talk about God and prayer. Um, and yeah, and so we're doing another one February 25th. And I, as far as like the copy and paste part, like you said, I have the whole like landing page, like how do you register for an event
Okay.
like this, how do you pay for an event like this, and all of that still happens pretty much online. But since it is in person, I do have a few people who asked if they could pay cash or check, and like, sure, bring it on the day of,
Or e-transfer.
or send it in the mail or whatever. Yeah, okay.
So this is fantastic because you're trusting yourself enough to host 4 hours of quality content to empower and love on women. You're
Mhm.
inviting them in person to create community where we may presume that even without a Facebook group for the life of the event, they can still make meaningful and continuous connection from that starting point.
Yes.
It's super low tech.
Mhm.
You either, I'm going to assume, and you'll speak to it, you either hire a caterer or self-provide simple food as ordered through the grocery store and maybe made the morning of in the kitchen because we're a startup. And if you're smart, which you are, include the cost of food in the price of the event without making the event price a barrier, like a fair market price.
Mhm.
Then you have access to a venue that is uncomplicated to access. I'll
Right.
let you declare what that venue is. And then you're very low tech. So you're removing any excuses, resistance, unknowns, barriers for yourself too. And
Yes.
you have a loose structure around it, but you're practiced in your intuition and in your leadership confidence that you know you can facilitate this. And I just want to take time to say that because hosting a 4-hour event in person does not have to be some big, crazy Pinterest, insane magazine photography thing. It's
Right.
just women getting together to eat and chat and learn about love, really, through a facilitator.
Mhm.
So good for you for doing that and supporting it with the landing page. Like, it's actually not really hard to set up an online payment page, is it?
No. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm not a super high techie person. I don't have intuition when it comes to tech as far
Mm,
as like, what should I even try? I have a
mhm.
friend that I call who tells me.
Perfect. Team, you have your IT
Yep.
team.
Yep. I have a friend that I call that is in that, whose brain does just say, "Oh, well, try this." And it's like,
Mhm.
"Okay." Um so yeah, no, very very low tech, very it was I literally printed my own pages of notes. It was probably 9 pages total of notes to get through 4 hours of content. And again, that's where my experience as a teacher came into play, because like I've done tons of lesson plans, so it's kind of a
Yes.
similar approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and then you use your intuition. You're providing the space. The most important thing I think is for someone who's exploring an in-person event and is intimidated by it, I would say is establish your primary goal and intention between why you're providing it.
Yes.
And for me, I knew my primary goal and intention was community and was to give these women an experience that just felt peaceful and fun and a break, like a break from the normal busyness of life.
Yeah.
And since I knew that was my goal, then even the stuff related to my own preparation and my content could sort of be taken with a grain of salt, because it was like, I'm more focused on the experience.
Right.
And by watching my audience in live, you know, live time, or like in real time, that's the right way to say that, in real time,
in real lifetime life.
Yeah, just kind of like observing them, like when I would give them something to dig into and discuss a little bit, then I could gauge and monitor of like, wow, they are really getting into this. Okay, I thought I was only going to give them 3 minutes to talk. I'm going to give them 10. I'm just going to keep listening in and look for the right place to transition and segue. And it was beautiful to see that and have that under that one time under my belt, to now know that like it is replicable, and I know that I can sort of, not lowering expectations is the wrong way to explain this, but that's what's coming to mind right now, in the sense of like,
you have higher confidence in doing it again.
Yeah, I guess that's the better way to say it, of like lowering the expectations I had placed on myself of how hard, air quotes, this was going to be, and how intimidating it was at first to do this, because I did put it on by myself. It was, and the venue was my mom's house. She happens to live on 2.5 acres in the country, with a beautiful pool and like beautiful landscaping. And so it was just like, sweet, here's half the experience right here. Most people don't get to experience life in the country, so they got to experience it for 4 hours.
So smart. Leveraging what you already have to create an experience.
And just start somewhere. And I started with what I had access to.
Yes. And you know, yay mom, because A, she's not going to say no to you, most likely. And B, super score. This is why I always say it's great to have friends, because I don't need to have a stable full of horses or a big fancy house when I have genuine friendships who have that, and then we all share in it together. Right. So you're already kind of smashing this solopreneur idea where, you know, you lean on friends for IT support, you lean on mom for luxurious getaways, you lean on other experiences and people to support and nurture you. And these are ways that we are already becoming the CEO that we are as we become it. By seeing and collecting those pieces without thinking that they're conditional or in the future only, like they are available now.
Oh, absolutely.
And with the marketing, like, you know, online where your following is, but I think there's still opportunities with postering, right? For example, printing posters, putting them on community boards, leaving them in the library, at a cafe, like places where you can advertise and see that, and just cast a few more lines out there, because we are still in a three-dimensional world, and so we can meaningfully collect and reach other people even outside of the online spaces, particularly for an in-person event, because you know, aside from having to put a QR code to direct them to an online one with a paper product somewhere, they're out and about and they're within drivable reach of the location for the most part. So you know, there's opportunities like that maybe sometimes we get lost. Like I said, I mean, I've been caught up in the online space, and I'm like, oh, the world's so much bigger. Even though the internet makes the world bigger, there's things around us too. So how big are these events? Like, do you put a limit on the number of women that can come?
I have, and so that was also, I guess, part of the reason of why I didn't go the route of flyers in a lot of different public places,
Yes.
was because I wasn't seeking to fill an auditorium.
Yes.
I was limited to my mom's backyard and what they could hear with the own volume of my voice without a microphone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's capped at 25,
Nice.
because 25 to me, and again, this kind of goes back to my experience in the classroom. Like anytime I had under 30 in the classroom, it felt intimate. It felt like we were a little community. Whereas like anytime I had more than 30 in the classroom, it felt like it was hard to connect with each student on an individual level. And so I kind of took that experience and applied it to what I was wanting to create, in the sense of like, it was very important to me to create a safe space where women could connect who don't know each other fairly quickly and get to a place of vulnerability with each other so that they could truly maximize the benefit of what I was offering them. And
That's
so
a
for
very
me,
clear intention.
yes,
Very clear
yeah.
intention.
And so for me, and also to me, if I'm being totally honest, part of the reason why I also wanted to keep it at 25 was because it was my very first one and I didn't want to
Sure.
overwhelm myself.
Yeah. Beta testing.
I knew what I
Yeah.
could kind of handle and
Yeah.
what I thought I would feel comfortable
course.
with, and I was right. I felt comfortable with it and it went really
Yes.
well.
Yes. Right? Perfect. And in that, things can bleed out. And so are you gonna have will there be somebody there to support you to maybe fill up your water, or to take photos and or video even off of their phone at this next event? Have you thought about kind of collecting some of the material? Because it's such a, we can take screenshots and clips from being on screen and recording, and we can have pictures of us on stage in front of audiences, which
Right.
is very empowering as well. So have you given any thought to some of that type of coverage?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you even asked that as it's approaching more quickly, because at my very first one, I did have the benefit of my online biz bestie. She's actually from Canada as well as like you.
Yep.
And we had never met in person,
Okay.
but she happened to be in California visiting her brother literally the week before my retreat. And so we just arranged it that she would fly from there to my house and do the retreat with me. And so, yes,
Okay.
I was able to get photos of
Good.
myself teaching and interacting with the women. And she got photos of the beautiful spread of food and just the
Right.
location like that I'm now reusing for this time around for advertising of like, this is what it looked like last time, in the times I've done this before. Here's what you can kind of start to get an idea of your head of what to expect visually. And so, yeah, for this time, I don't yet have a specific person identified. In fact, my mom has shared with me recently that she'll be at a wedding and not even at the house on the day that we're doing the retreat. So I can't ask her, but I do have a good friend of mine that I know was planning to attend anyways. And I know she would be happy to kind of play a dual role of participant as well as, like you said, curator.
Capturing and supporting a little
Yes.
bit. And,
Yes.
I point that out because like I said to you in the preamble, it's a fantastic opportunity to collect marketing material. But I also want to make it clear that it's not complicated. You don't have to spend $1,500 on a professional photographer to come and shoot your thing.
Right.
Use an actual camera. They still exist. Mind you, sometimes phones are even better these days.
Right.
And if the person's not sure of what to take pictures of, you give them some scenarios to base it off of, and then away they go. Like the benefit of your online biz bestie is she probably has, some understandings of what would look good for marketing photos and can take them. But that's a very easily explained concept to somebody who doesn't know what to do. So I do hope that this friend you have in mind, will serve that
No, I'm glad you
purpose.
brought that up because that's marketing and forward thinking when it comes to planning an event is something that I tend to like not put very much time into. I'm so caught up in the present moment and planning for the present. So I'm very appreciative that you brought that up and kind of brought it back to the forefront before with plenty of time for me to still implement that and take advantage of that.
Yeah. And get her to take little video clips too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And wonderful. So this is super exciting. It sounds like it's going to be great. Is it at the same venue? Is it at your mom's house again?
Yep, same venue,
Perfect.
because we have the flexibility to, if it's great weather, like it happens to be today, we can stay outdoors. And if it's not, then we can easily flip it to indoors and be near a fireplace and just have it be all cozy and amazing.
That sounds like a good fit for February, even in California.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. That's great. So Angela, as we kind of wrap up here, like what have you overcome that we haven't talked about? Or what are your choice, a guest choice, or what are you just so excited about in 2023?
I think I'm gonna go for what I'm excited about,
Great.
because it also kind of tags with something I've recently overcome, which for some reason, it for a full 24 hours, all consuming, popped into my head of like, I can't make more money because I can't add more clients to my schedule because they all have full-time jobs and live on the West Coast where I live. They're on my same time zone and they all want me to work with them in the evenings and on Saturdays when I
Don't want
can't
to
be
work.
very available and don't want to work. And so I had this like thing in my mind of like, what do I do now? Like, I'm tapped out. And I quickly was able to overcome that with just a quick conversation with that same biz bestie of just kind of processing out loud. And in that conversation, I had this almost immediate realization of like, duh, like ask God to help you expand your audience beyond Pacific Standard Time Zone. Get out of PST and your problem is solved, because like people on the East Coast are 3 hours ahead of you and they'll be getting off work, but it's still the middle of your day while kids are at school and husband's at work. And I have the free, uninterrupted time to devote to being a really good, attentive life coach to them. And so I was like, yeah, this is, hello, you're like, why are you placing these limitations on yourself? You have the ability to reach audiences in other time zones in other parts of the world. And yeah. And so I'm super excited about that, and appreciative of opportunities like this, of being on a podcast that has a larger reach and will help me with that goal of expanding my audience and getting outside, I guess you could say, my little bubble of where I currently have the warmest audience. The warmest audience is very close to me in proximity. And so I'm looking to expand that, and just super excited for what that looks like, and the opportunities that come along as I work towards that.
Super. So we can follow you on Instagram. You have a website. You're active on Facebook as well.
Yes, I am on. I do not have a website at this time. I have a link tree with links to multiple ways to interact with me. And I can send you that if I haven't done it yet for your listeners. But yeah, Instagram, I am at Angela Quinteros Coaching. And then Facebook, it's just my first and last name. I try to keep it simple, so I'm easy to find. Angela Quinteros.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been a real treat. I really appreciate you taking us into the back end of your business and sharing your journey. We touched on so many beautiful, beautiful things that I know are going to, like you said, breathe life into women who are kind of on the fence or unsure, because it's that whole thing. If I can do it, you can do it. Like, and literally, if I can do it, like, oh my God, you can do it, because I didn't think I could do it. And we help each other through that way. I look forward to seeing what's coming, and I wish you the best success in this event. Galentine's Day is so fun. Like, it's just such a good way to have fun with it and to care for ourselves so that we can care for others. Thanks for joining me today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mia. Thank you for having me. I've super enjoyed our conversation. It's just a lot of fun.
Awesome.